in hip hop where people will, because of cadence or just the way in which you say the word. Like if you say instead of orange, if you say like orange, you can rhyme that with derange. There's like things that you can just do.
You're
That's what I was.
Eminem. More
I'm a
talented,
sweet little
clearly.
candy. I mean, I'm a little bit of chocolate.
This podcast contains the arguably witty banter of two friends, Skippy and Dougals, that like to debate about investing. The content is intended to be entertaining and for informational purposes only, not investment advice. You should do your own research and consult a financial professional before using any of the information in this podcast, and especially before investing.
You ever watch that show on VH1? It was called whatever the decade was they were talking about. So it'd be like, I love the 2000s, I love the 80s, I love the 90s,
yeah.
right? You watched that back in the day?
Yeah.
There was one episode I recall where I think they were talking about the 90s. I think it was I love the 90s. And there was this black dude. It was a bunch of comedians. For those that haven't seen it, it'd be like comedians that were on there, celebs of some sort, but a lot of times they have comedians on there talking about things they enjoyed about that decade. There was one, I don't remember who it was, but it was a black comedian, was on there, and he was talking about his high school graduation. And he said the people I hung out with in high school were like, school wasn't a big deal for them, right? We'd hang out, we sit at the 7-Eleven, sipping our our Slurpees, maybe light a little something up that wasn't legal at the time, et cetera, et cetera. And he goes, so that's what they knew about me. And he goes, then we get to high school graduation and they're like, the valedictorian of the class is whatever, and like, called him out. And he said his friends like turned to him and looked at him and he goes, I hang out with y'all, but I be reading. That's pretty gangster. I'll bring that up because today's show, what are we gonna do?
Now I'm confused. We're hanging out at 7-Eleven?
Yes, we're buying 7-Eleven stock and we're reading.
It reminds me of the story. I was hanging out with kind of a big shot lawyer at a wine tasting a couple months back.
Okay.
And I happened to be talking to the winemakers about their equity model. So like equity is on the brain, right? So I'm talking to this dude about how he structures his law firm. And I'm like, yo, is it just you eat what you kill? With those who don't know, it just means that the business you bring in the door is what you get paid on. Typical law firm model. He goes, no, man, no, we're switching to more of an equity model. I've been thinking about this for 2 months. I finally got it this week. It was a Munger moment. What's happening is this dude started and owns the firm, and it turned out that he wasn't killing much meat these days.
Oh.
So he's switching up the model, man. Aren't humans great? He's like, no, no, it's more of an equity model.
Yeah.
You know why? We're just switching that up, actually. I'm glad you mentioned it. Here we go.
It's about that passive income. It's about that passive income.
That passive income. Today, we're going to talk like 15 books. And here's with feedback, skippydougals@gmail.com. We think this might be interesting. We think the listeners might be looking for the next novel to pick up. Very few of these are even investing related, but they're stuff we've consumed in the past 3 to 6 months or so. And that we liked. Like, we're not just telling you everything we read, because I'll save you that garbage.
We'll have a few quick hits of stuff that's been going on, then do what Skippy just said. What I'll say, though, is when you say not investment related, what we mean is not directly. It's not like an investment book necessarily. But we discussed Li Lu a few months ago. And one of the things I really loved about what he was talking about when he was visiting that class is investing is about pattern matching, knowing a broad group of things so that when you're looking at a company, you can better assess it. So I find everything's investment related. So
that's fair.
Quick hit time?
Quick hit time.
All right. I'm going to start off with something you sent over to me that I thought was pretty solid. It's a Goldman Sachs outlook. America Powers On is the name of this. Just like Warren Buffett always says, bet on America, bet on America. So what Goldman is saying in this piece, or this report, is they're saying, we've been telling y'all since the great financial crisis, we've been telling y'all, I didn't fact check them, but I'm gonna believe them. We've been telling y'all, keep investing in the US because that's the way to go. US is outperforming international. US is crushing. There's one thing I'm gonna pull out of here though. There's a lot in here. We'll put on the Substack, skippydougals.substack.com. We'll put that on Monday. But one thing I'll pull out is they have this chart. We've seen this in a few places, but they have a chart of the S&P 500 price index versus earnings. And they talk about earnings a good amount in here and how US earnings are going to be growing faster than other earnings. They look at PE ratios, look at lots of stuff. One of the points I want to raise, though, is they're saying earnings will continue to grow. Corporations are spitting out profits in the US, stay invested in the US. When earnings grow, price grows, stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
I was then reading this report from FactSet. FactSet is a organization that is kind of like think about it like a Bloomberg-ish type organization where it's a place you can go to look at a bunch of different corporate metrics, et cetera, et cetera. They put out this research report where they looked at the estimated earnings growth year over year for Q4 2023. So this is not forward looking, it's what just happened. But according to what they put out here, so remember, Goldman saying earnings going to keep growing.
Mm-hmm.
What FactSet's saying is Q4 2023, according to what they believe, 53.7% was the earnings growth in Q4 2023 for Amazon, Apple, Google, Meta, Microsoft, and NVIDIA. The other 494 S&P 500 companies, negative 10.5%.
So you're telling me maybe earnings of 7 companies are growing?
Maybe
earnings of the entire
I think
US?
that's what's interesting. You know, we because we were talking about the Magnificent Seven so much last year, there's these aggregate numbers that are like earnings will continue to grow, stay invested. Where I'm not saying the opposite, but I think it's interesting when you start to break it down and say where are earnings coming from, and it's not just those other companies are doing well too, but it's interesting when you break it down like that.
If you just look at relative valuations and mean reversion, the smart money long term is probably outside of the US today. But those 7 companies have been performing in ways that's almost unheard of and hasn't been seen, at least in recent times. So it's hard to bet against like the Microsoft and the Meta, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So this Goldman Sachs report had so much good info. I actually retitled it. Their title was America Powers On. My title is The US is a Miracle, except for Congress. Congress sucks.
That's a good title. I would click on that.
Exhibit 22. Bills enacted by U.S. congressional session going back to, I think this is all the congressional sessions. This is, oh no, sorry. They only show a graph for the last 18, but it says the 118th Congress is one of the most unproductive in modern history. This bar graph, Dougals, like typically they enact, I don't know, say 400 bills maybe on average. They've done like 20. Like typically in modern history, they do 400. This congressional session has done 20.
Maybe it's the most productive,
guys.
Because maybe it's like what you did with 400, I can do with 20. Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, I'm sure that's it. But here's the U.S. is a miracle part. Demographics really solid. Some of the best in the world when you project out the next 60 years. Compared to countries like Germany, Japan, China, even India, Russia, the UK, like amazing. R&D spending, they had this breakdown of basically country R&D spending, which is fascinating. And we crush everybody. We do 5 times more than the next, our spending is more than the 5 next largest countries in the world combined on R&D. Where do you think innovation is going to come from?
There you go.
That R&D spending. It's incredible. The chart was really good, but here's the warning sign maybe. Exhibit 78, a Dougal special. Household delinquency by loan type. Starting to see uptick in auto loans, credit card loans, student loans.
Yep.
I'm still not convinced that it's like so much of economic data that comes in appears really positive. But there's still some cracks under there. I mean, it's just really hard to know where we're headed.
Yeah, it's because I don't want this to sound like a prediction of any sort, but if I hope nothing breaks. If something were to, the feeling that I have is that it's going to be a cliff and not a gradual decline.
Which is how things work. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, things are
when
going to
things
look
go
good,
up, up,
good,
up,
good,
up, up,
good,
yeah,
bad. Yeah.
bad.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
this is not rocket science that I'm throwing out here, but like that's the reason why things can still look good and end up not bueno. This is a good report. I like it. I'm going to shift. I'm going to take one thing you said about 2 minutes ago. You talking about the smart money. Remember you talking about the smart money?
Yeah.
Where is the smart money going into these days? I'll tell you what. I'll tell you where the smart money's going. And when I say smart money, I'm talking about some bow post group, Seth Klarman's joint. I'm talking about some .72. I'm talking about some Berkshire Hathaway. Where's their money going, players? Where's their money going? When you get in your car and you want to just crank up like a podcast, or maybe you want to crank up your smooth jazz channel, you go to Sirius Satellite Radio.
XM. You're doing this? I dug into this.
Yeah. So
Okay,
here we
first of
go.
all, shout out to Todd who sent this our way. It's kind of listener mail in a roundabout way.
Oh, there we go. There
Yeah.
we go. Let me give you a ticker. LSXMA. That is Larry, Sally, Xerox, Mary, Alpha. I don't know if any of those were Army call signals. That's the ticker. What's going on here is that Liberty and correct me if I say something incorrect.
Yeah.
Liberty Media is looking to buy Sirius Satellite Radio completely, but they own a part of it. And the part of it that they own is a tracking stock, and it's on the markets under that ticker I just gave to you. And so there's this bet basically that there's an arbitrage situation where what currently is trading at about $31 a share, this tracking stock, will go up to the potential purchase price of $45 a share sometime this year, I think in Q3. And so some of the smart money is saying, yeah, there's a margin of safety here that this thing is going to close and it's going to happen. And if it does, that's 50% upside.
It's slightly more complicated than that. So I almost bought this because I trust Todd and the analysis here is good. The article you're referencing is from Bloomberg. From memory, Dougals, I think it's a all share purchase. And so it converts 8.37 shares of one to the other. The like baby Liberty X Sirius XM to the mothership Sirius XM.
Yeah, Liberty
two different
Biberty.
tickers. Yeah. And right now, yeah, when I looked at it, I thought the safety or the upside was only like 35%. If you're saying it's 50, I trust you. The problem is both these stocks move every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if I could fix the value of the mothership Sirius XM and like whether it's discounted cash flow or anything else and say it's actually worth X, and it probably is, someone like Berkshire, I'm sure, has done a deep dive, or Bowpost Group is really the one that I trust their analysis for
Yep.
arbitrage event like this. So I could just ride Seth's coattails. But when I went through all that analysis, I was like, I don't really like the mothership Sirius XM. Yeah. I don't really have confidence in the value. So what could happen is I could buy with 40-50% upside today, and I'm not convinced that the mothership won't stock by the time that the merger takes place, won't go down 40%. And then I took a bunch of risk to make whatever. Say I make 12%. Like it just, I ran away from it.
Yeah, I was trying to keep it simple. I'll repeat because you're right. I'll repeat part of what you said again in, I think, the simplest way possible.
Okay.
So I was just talking about one going up, but you're absolutely right. What will happen if this closes is that the two stock prices will be at the same valuation.
Yes.
And so that could either mean that this tracking stock goes up, or it could mean that the other stock comes down, but they will be at the same level. And what the smart money, yeah. I'm trying to, I'm not trying to talk about the mechanics. I'm just saying. So, but what the smart money's saying when they're saying that there's a margin of safety, they're saying that there's in that 50%, there's enough margin of safety such that the return could end up at 30%, right? If roughly, right? If one comes down, but the other still comes up. So that's the simplest way.
Is it the best idea out there? It's my thing. I love it. I love the mechanics of it because it's like a math-based way to say I'm guaranteed margin of safety. But this isn't my first rodeo in merger arbitrage.
It's not. No.
So,
I'm just saying that's where the smart money's going. You talking about the smart money, I'm just talking about the smart money too.
all right.
Okay. Can we keep talking about smart money? Can we keep talking about smart money? Here's
Only
where
if there's a
else.
wheel of fortune coming.
Here's where else the smart money is going. Okay. So I'm talking about penny stocks. If you are not all up in penny stocks right now, good for you. But this gentleman is going to play.
Wait. Public service announcement. There's some sarcasm here. We are not comparing this dude to Buffett or anyone else that knows what's happening. Okay. But we're back in bubbly times, it appears, based on what's happening on TikTok investors. There goes. You want to roll the clip?
Oh, yeah. Because this dude, his name must be Michael because he's getting buble. Here we go.
Welcome to day 17 of throwing $3,000 into random penny stocks. So today the market's going up, so that's really good. Let's take a look at our numbers and see where we're going. As you guys can see, it's steadily going up. We're at 2,723. So we're really close to back to the $3,000 mark, and I think it's just going to keep going up from there. But like usual, let's throw in the random generator and see what stock we land on today. All right, so here's the random wheel. It's over 100 penny stocks, and let's see what it lands on. Whatever it lands on, that's what I'm buying. EGIO, let's see more about it. All right, so EGIO is currently sitting at 25 cents. It's gone down in the last month, but I don't care about that stuff. So it's producing digital content and video delivery, cloud security, edge computing, which means absolutely nothing to me, but here we go. I bought $99 of 396 shares at 25 cents. And let's keep going till the end of the month and see how it goes from there.
So that's where the smart money's going.
Okay, he has like a wheel of fortune wheel that he programmed in. And that was the little noise you hear in the background. And then it randomly selects a stock.
A penny stock.
Then
a penny stock.
When he pulls it up on Robinhood and he says like whatever it was, like digital commerce, and he says I have no clue what that means. It's because the first time he's ever heard of the stock is when he's pulling it up on Robinhood. He's reading the description, and then on top of that, at the beginning, he goes like, markets are up today. That's good. We're at $2,700, which is close to the $3,000 I started with. Like,
it's only 10% off.
It's so bad.
It's
now,
so bad.
Okay, so it's gambling. I don't like it. I have a question for you. He at least is taking savings and buying assets. Is this like better than? Well, it's probably not fair to compare it to anything else. I want to say this is the worst thing in the world, but he's not just like, he's kind of throwing the money in the fireplace, I guess.
Whether he's throwing it in the fireplace or not, it's like, this is not investing.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But if this is, here's what I'd say. If this is his way of just getting to understand how the market works, understand how to buy, the $3,000 doesn't matter much, but he's trying to get used to the mechanics, I'm cool.
We both tried to do the positive take on this. There's just not a positive
it's just not working.
We're trying to be kind.
It's just not working.
This is just not.
All right, here's what's related to that. So there's this piece in Axios. Americans' casino spending is soaring. We are currently at all-time highs for the amount that Americans are spending at casinos, at about $161 billion right now. I don't know if there's anything else to say about that.
Disappointing.
Speaking of disappointing, I was just about smart money. I'm going to combine a couple things, smart money and disappointing. I was so excited that Chamath was raising a VC fund because I had my checkbook ready. But then he called it off. Disappointed. I was so disappointed. He called it off. So Chamath, he had plans to raise $1 billion for this investment fund, decided not to do it. He then got asked what happened. He responded by sending a poop emoji.
It's part of the Elon Musk playbook. The poop
you can't
emoji.
just take random things from the Elon Musk playbook. You either run
do the whole
book.
thing. Yeah.
You either run that whole book or you don't. Oh, all right. That's the end of my quick hits.
I'm gonna pull a Munger. Nothing to add on Chamath, so I don't trash the guy. All right. Books. How about you start us off, Dougals? Yeah. How are you ranking these? How are you walk us through that?
No, I'm gonna talk about some books that I would recommend that I enjoyed that I read last year.
Let's
These are
do
not
it.
necessarily my top books, even from last year, but they're books I definitely recommend.
Wait, where do we get the top books? With you withholding that information? You have
Yeah,
a separate
yeah, I got a whole separate thing on that. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that.
reading with
Got a whole separate thing on
Dougals,
that.
a whole
I
separate
could maybe
podcast.
I haven't. So I make a blog post of my book recommendations. I generally have put it on my personal blog and not on the Skippy Dougals blog because it's not really investment related. Maybe this year I'll put it on the Skippy Dougals blog. We'll see if people enjoy it. Okay, so G-Man is the book. It's
G-Man.
about G-Man. You might think it's about the New York Football Giants, but no, it's not. It is about J. Edgar Hoover. So this is a book by Beverly Gage, and it goes back and looks at the life of J. Edgar Hoover. For those that are not familiar with Hoover, he ran the FBI, basically was there from near the beginning of the
I
FBI.
know. Listen, I know you read the books, but I got to jump in there. No, vacuums, Dougals.
Oh, is that what this
Not a
is?
FBI. Yeah, vacuum.
That explains so much of what happened in this book. Because I was like, this book sucks. No, I'm joking. No, so this book actually I thought was really solid. It dives into his life, the starting of the FBI, what his like political upbringing is. It then walks through him running the FBI, decisions that he made, his personal life. It's long. It's a long one, but it goes deep, and I think it's well worth the read. Shocked me how good this was.
I'm intrigued. I
There you
like
go.
this.
There you go.
I
G-Man.
like my boy Hoover too.
And all these we'll put on the Substack, by the way. So,
Yeah.
all right.
My most recent read, thought provoking. It's called Dopamine Nation: Finding Balance in the Age of Indulgence, by a professor at Stanford, Anna Lemke. I think I'm saying that right. Going to read a quote, and I'm going to say nothing else. It's kind of long, so bear with me. Without pleasure, we want to eat, drink, or reproduce. Without pain, we wouldn't protect ourselves from injury or death. By raising our neutral set point with repeated pleasures, we become endless strivers, never satisfied with what we have, always looking for more. But herein lies the problem. Human beings, the ultimate seekers, have responded too well to the challenge of pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain. As a result, we've transformed the world from a place of scarcity to a place of overwhelming abundance. That's the book in a nutshell. So her take, which I don't know is perfect, but like really the first half of this book will blow your
Yeah.
mind.
Okay.
When she talks about whether it's food or investing, Robinhood, or you name it, we've created free markets around things that give us dopamine hits. I didn't know any of this. Like we made synthetic drugs on top of natural occurring opiates that are 1,000 times more powerful. Like I had no idea that the contrasts are that stark, and it becomes so much easier to constantly get dopamine hit after dopamine hit after dopamine hit. That if you get out of balance, that leads to addiction and a lot of. I mean, it might lead to buying penny stocks because on a wheel, like honestly, because you get a dopamine hit every time you buy a penny stock. Fascinating book. Really thought it was good. Liked it.
And we talk about Meta dopamine hits. I mean, that organization has mastered. That's why they in Congress every 6 days.
Yep. Yep. And that's why I'm not selling, because they have 4 billion users and they are stealing people's dopamine.
Because I am a capitalist. And there you go. Okay. My next one. This one's a bit more serious, worth the read, but be ready for it if you do. It's called Built from the Fire. So we've talked, maybe it was a couple years ago, we talked about the Tulsa massacre from 1921, right? It must have been 3 years ago. We probably talked about it around the 100-year anniversary. And so this night, by the way, I'll give you quick synopsis. It's 100 years ago, so the histories of these things are difficult to like fully come across. But the short version is on this night or during this day in Tulsa, there was an alleged sexual assault that occurred inside of an elevator of a department store. From all accounts, the sexual assault probably did not happen, but there was an alleged sexual assault. There was a black man that was in the elevator with a white woman scream, and the black man was then pursued by the town. The sheriff of the town took the black man in, put him in jail, not necessarily, I don't think maybe not at all because he thought he was guilty, but to keep him safe. Like the sheriff was like, the people in the town are coming after you. I'm going to keep you here.
Yep.
This then set off a night of terror, a lot of killing, etc. that happened. And there was this district, this business district in Tulsa called Greenwood District. And Greenwood is what they call the Black Wall Street. It was when black people were building up their businesses, etc. It got fully burned. Okay, that's the short version. What this book does. So I've read a few books about that night. This book goes back and follows the families of like, I think it was 3 or 4 families from that time and what's happened to the families over the last 100 years.
Oh, wow.
And so like what this event did for someone that like there was this woman that owned a couple different businesses, including the movie theater, and she was like thriving, one of the wealthiest people in Tulsa. Everything got burned down and it follows what's happened to her family over the last 100 years. It's a deep one. Be ready for it, but I recommend it.
That sounds like another great one. I wish I had more of the facts at my fingertips, but there's a black family. This is like, I think it's Santa Monica area that owned a ridiculous, great real estate beachfront in basically Santa Monica that they were robbed of. And there's been articles on that recently in the court cases, and they kind of got rights to the land back. And then the debate, because I think there's like a hotel on it or something now. The debate about what happens next is truly fascinating. Like it is, based on what I know, one of those 100-year stories that's interesting around every corner because like it just really matters. It really changes the history. I want to say the history of the future, but I hope you know what I mean by that.
That's another good investment report title.
There we go. There we go. So when we signed up to do this, I didn't realize that you were giving me like 7 more reads. I'm in trouble now.
You got plenty of time.
All right. So this is really just to throw shade your way. Morgan Housel's new book, which I read the day it came out and is great. And I was trying to find my notes, but
it's in my queen.
My notes are buried. So we might just come back to this one. For listeners of the show, if you read any of Morgan's stuff, Morgan is truly, I always feel like I have to make time for it because it makes you think deeply. But every time I actually dive in, I'm always happy that I did. You know, there's no disappointment in reading a Morgan Housel article or book. This is good. So I think we'll do the deep dive when you actually get to it. But honestly, if you hear all the titles we talked about today and just need like an easy one to read on a plane for business travel, just pick it up. It's good.
I like that. I think it's like number 8 in my queue. So, all right. The next one, a little bit more playful, called Dilla Time. Dilla Time. This one's, the last one, Built from the Fire, was by Victor Luckerson. This one, Dilla Time, by Dan Charnas. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. So for those music lovers out there in the world, there was a producer back in the 90s, early 2000s, started making them beats that people was like, oh snap, who did that down? His name was Jay Dilla.
Mm-hmm.
Jay Dilla created, well, what's the right way to say this? I'll say created. Basically what he did from a young age, he would just hear music differently. And so this is the story of him like growing up and getting to the music business, but he'd hear music differently. And so then he would say, if you go back and listen to different styles of music, that you listen to jazz, you listen to soul, you go back, you listen to gospel, etc. There was this, I'll say like European way of how timing has to work in music. That's symmetrical, sounds a certain way. And he goes, I can take different parts of what I've heard back from music I've listened to and change up the beat such that it sounds like a little off, but nice to you. That's Dilla Time. And so this book is about what he did for music. And a lot of people probably haven't heard of Jay Dilla. So it's kind of an interesting read. I also found it to be interesting. As I was reading this book, I put it down and be like, I got to check out that track again. Because there'd be tracks I haven't heard in 25, 30 years. I was like, let me listen to that joint again. Let me listen to The Light by Common as an example. One more time
so
and like,
good.
listen
So
to it.
good.
Anyway, Dilla Time.
So you know what clip I saw? I'm sure this has been out there for a decade plus. Have you seen the clip of Eminem rhyming words with orange?
I don't know. I don't know about that one.
So it's like very similar in the way he messes with his cadence to kind of
Yeah.
hear music differently. And so it's some like sit down interview with someone like Charlie Rose or whatever. And he just goes, yeah, like that's not true. I can rhyme anything with anything. And he goes on for like whatever, 20 seconds. And you're just like, oh my goodness, none of those words rhyme, but they all sound
Yeah.
like they would rhyme. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's beautiful. I mean, I have not heard that, so I will not do this justice, but I do think it's amazing when you can hear in hip hop or other, I'll just stick with hip hop because that's what I know best. In hip hop, where people will, because of cadence or just the way in which you say the word, like if
Mhm.
you say instead of orange, if you say like orange, right? You can rhyme that with derange, right? There's like things that you could just do with
You're
that's what
Eminem, more
I'm a sweet
talented,
little
clearly.
candy. I mean,
But
I'm a little bit of chocolate.
okay. We talked about this book last week, but like, so we had Connor Doherty on the show. Love the interview. I think he's so like a little bit of a mad scientist because his expertise in real estate is so deep, right? But there are parts of that book which you and I both just read that I just have to. We didn't even get to talk about some of these things. So
Oh yeah.
first is housing and inequality. Like that was one of my main questions, and I think he does a masterful job of explaining some of the history there. It goes back to it's a lot of the stuff we were just talking about in Tulsa and California with land ownership. Really good book. I think the majority of the inequality talk is in chapter 4 of Golden Gates, Fighting for Housing in America. Fascinating stuff. And then the other thing that we were able to touch on briefly, but not as much as I wanted to, is really like this maturation in the American mindset. And it's happened in the Canadian mindset too, where a number of things collided in place. Home ownership got sold as the American dream. Home prices rose, all within the past 60 years to a place where there's a mindset for a lot of people in this country that home prices cannot go down for a variety of reasons. Some people think of it as investment. Some people, I mean, it's just so complex.
Yep.
But I thought his book
It's
just
good.
does a masterful job of outlining some of those things. And I don't feel like I can intelligently speak about residential real estate in this country without Connor's expertise. And I don't know anyone else that's his parallel on that front.
So I there's there was a book I wasn't going to talk about. I
Yeah.
love this book that I read last year. I wasn't going to talk about it because I was trying to get off my serious front, but now because you brought that up, there is a book I'm going to recommend. It's called The Color of Law: A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America. So this book goes back into history from a legal perspective. This is written by Richard Rothstein from a legal perspective and looks at what laws were put in place that then systemically made it such that people couldn't buy houses as one factor, that like redlining, like how that occurred and like what that
Yeah.
did. The Color of Law. It's a good one. That's a freebie.
Again,
Freebie.
another
Oh, sorry, that book is not free. I
book I
just
got to
meant like
read.
I didn't mean to talk about it, so that was like a bonus book.
Free recommendation. We followed you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, my real next recommendation though is Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson.
How is it? Like give me a rating out of 5.
I really enjoyed it. On my rating scale, so my rating scale I go from 1 to 4. It got a 4. This book I thought was solid, and
why does your rating scale go from 1 to 4 when I asked you to give it a rating out of 5? I'm
because
confused.
I don't do that. I don't do that nonsense. What I do. So here's my rating scale. A 1. It's not like a 4-star thing. A 1 means not worth reading it. That's what a 1 is. A 2 means it's worth reading. A 3 is I'd recommend it to somebody, and a 4 is you best go read it right now.
It's a banger.
So it's the best go read it right now.
Jay Dilla produced it, basically.
Yeah. Jay Dilla produced Elon Musk. So I like Walter stuff, generally speaking. Although I think some of his books I like more than others. Einstein, enjoyed, not going to get a 4. This book got a 4 for me. What it did for me with Elon, and this gets back to even what we were talking about before, the poop emojis, is in reading this book, I went, Elon makes sense. Not, just to be clear, not I agree with all the things and I think that what he's saying is right. But when you string the fullness of Elon together, I went, it's just logical. Like the things that he does and says, for the most part, connect to his fundamental beliefs. And there are not a lot of people that I could say that about.
He's a very analytical thinker. I mean, I haven't read the book. It's another one I need to read. I generally follow his train of thought. Like sometimes I think his actions are unusual, but it's very rare that I'm like, and where did that count? Like, do you remember when he was mad at short sellers for Tesla stock?
Yeah.
And he sold red short shorts on Tesla's
Yes.
website. Like it's a car
Yes.
company
Yeah.
for like $100. It was a joke. It was kind of funny. That's
There
I
you
get
go.
where it
go.
came from. I'll have to check that one out. Speaking of which, what he's done with cars, there's debate over his compensation model, which is when Tesla, I'll get the facts roughly right here. When Tesla was like a $60 billion company in terms of market cap, they signed something that said, if we're a $600 billion company, again, directionally right, then we're going to give Musk a $50 billion bonus, basically. And the reason they signed that is because they said that would make him one of the top five. That would make Tesla one of the top five most valuable companies in the world. Like that's impossible. And guess what? He did it.
Yeah.
And then now it's in court whether that's a insane compensation model or not, which I understand as well. But
hold clearly, Delaware said it is an insane compensation model, and then Elon's like, well, then companies should leave Delaware. This is how he rolls. This is how he rolls.
Yeah, I mean, it is an insane compensation model, but what he did is also insane and basically unbelievable. I don't.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a side tangent. I'm telling you, if you look at like the Model 3 and the Model Y and you live in a state that gives decent incentives, they're basically giving those cars away now after you factor in the savings I get. It's insane what he's done to change the dynamic of one of the most entrenched old school models. And I'm talking about automotive sales. It's bizarre. It's fascinating, dude. My next book is one that it was really popular for a while. I think its moment is gone, but it's Outlived by Peter Attia.
Oh, yep.
Have you read this one?
I did.
Here's the breakdown, guys. You don't need to read it, although it's fascinating. If you get your VO2 max in the top 2% of your age group, or even better, the top 2% of an age group slightly below you, your chance of dying is very, very small. Now, this is hilarious.
No, you're going to die.
But your
not
chance
immortal.
of dying prematurely.
Yeah, you're not immortal at that point, just to be clear.
It's bizarre because in a way, that's like a very meaningful fact that says the most powerful medicine we have is exercise. If you're solving this equation purely of I'm trying to live long, if that's the equation you're trying to solve, exercise is probably the best thing you can do. But also, that's kind of insane. Like, oh, you just have to be like an Olympic level athlete and you're going to be more resilient to injuries and disease. Really? That's what your decades of research informed you? Like, I think I could have told you that in 5th grade.
So something else I liked from this book, sticking with the exercise point, which is practical, is he brought up, I can't remember exactly what he called it, but I think it was something like the geriatric decathlon. It was something like that he called it. Mm-hmm. And what he was saying was, as you're getting older, it's important to maintain muscle mass and all the stuff you just mentioned around like exercise is a big deal. And think about the things that you want to do when you're older and do workouts that support those things. Like an example is like, if you want to be able to pick up your grandchild, but you can't do cleans with 35 pounds, then you're not going to be able to pick up your grandchild. So it's like things like that, or like do farmer carries. Because if you do farmer carries where you're holding weights and you're walking, for let's call it 30 seconds, that means you can carry your groceries. It's just like there are like some practical elements that I was like, it's pretty interesting.
You see this brilliant commercial. I think it was from Germany. Came out during the holiday season. It's this grandpa widower he just like gets in his sweats every day and starts doing these crazy exercises. And his neighbors start taking notice, and everyone's going like, what got into Charles over there, right? Does this for months and months and months. And every time you're like, those exercises are super bizarre. And then Christmas comes around. He picks up his granddaughter to put the star on the Christmas tree. Like, it's so heartwarming, but it's kind of that. Like prepped months in advance because he knew he wanted to do this one thing.
Yeah,
Really cool.
that's it. That's awesome. I love it. My next book is called An Immense World: How Animal Senses Reveal the Hidden Realms Around Us. I may have brought this up in one of the podcast episodes this year. I thought this book was super cool. If you think animals are interesting, the book is interesting for that reason. It goes through different animals around the world, some of which you probably heard of, some of which you maybe didn't, and how they sense the world. So that's how they experience touch, how they experience sound, how they experience sight. And it's very different from the way other animals do. So if you like animals, boom, boom, check it out because it's awesome for that reason. I also enjoyed it because in a lot of my thought process, I think about different perspectives and how do you view the world from other people's perspectives. And so while these were animals, one of the key themes that came up for me was when I'm seeing a thing and someone else is looking at that same thing, I imagine that they're seeing the same thing that I am. And then maybe we agree about it, maybe we disagree about it.
They're never seeing the same thing.
But they're never seeing the same thing. And I think intellectually, I think we kind of get that. But this just brought it home in a really practical sense that when we hear the same thing, when you read the same thing, you're actually not reading or hearing the same thing. People's backgrounds and experiences come into it. Literally their biology might come into it. So I thought this is a pretty pimp one.
Like it. I'm going to squeeze two in here. Free recommendation. Poor Charlie's Almanac. Buy it through Stripe Press. I've been seeing some buzz. Mine's still in the mail. I think for $20, not only do you get a beautiful hardcover of this masterpiece, I think they're also sending out some peanut brittle doodles.
Is that a real thing?
I've seen multiple people get it. Now I don't know if they're like they got the celebrity package or if that's a standard package. But man, I'm dying to get. I hate peanut brittle. I will eat it in Charlie's memory. Pick that one up. The book I really want to talk about is called Thirst: A Story of Redemption, Compassion, and Mission to Bring Clean Water to the World. It's by Scott Harrison. I saw this guy speak at a conference. He runs Charity Water. His story is pretty interesting. Charity Water is just a charity that I think is cool. Basically, they're providing clean water to Africa because it's a foundational element that, like, dirty water leads to disease, illness, lack of education. If someone has to walk 6 hours each day, they don't have time to educate their children. If water's on their doorstep, they have time. So it's one of those foundational elements. Now, like, my wife's take on this is with charity is that you should try and be more local. Like, I'm not in Africa, but to me, the bang for the buck part of this initiative is amazing. Like, it's one of those spend $10 here, $10 there, and truly change the lives of, tens of thousands of people if we all band together. So his book is really in depth, but thought it was a quality read. And this is an easy organization to get behind because 100% of your gift goes to providing clean water to folks in Africa. Even if you use a credit card, they'll find a way to cover the credit card fees. All the administration cost is provided through other means. So they have two charity arms, right? One that funds the administrative task. This is not the American, this is the American Heart Association, where 23% of your funds go to overhead costs. Just 100% goes to provide clean water to people. It's super awesome.
Love it. All right. My next one, Do Hard Things.
Yes,
Why we get resilience wrong.
This.
Yeah. Why we get resilience wrong and the surprising signs of real toughness. The title kind of says it all. What's the benefit of being able to do things that are difficult? And there just is. Sometimes just for the sake of it. I read a blog post maybe 4 or 5 months ago, something like that, about someone talking about math for this reason. And it was something about the real value of math for kids. And it's not necessarily about the fact that you need to know how to do calculus, but just being able to learn a hard thing is a valuable skill. And so learning hard things, this is doing hard things, but I think it's a worthwhile read, worthwhile message. This one's by Steve Magnus.
In a way, this ties into Dopamine Nation, the first book I mentioned. It also might tie into a book called The Comfort Crisis, which I think I've mentioned to you before, which is about the benefit of doing hard things. how that resets our natural balance. Like if everything's a teeter totter and the hedonic treadmill pushes that teeter totter in one way or another, and sometimes it pushes it to a life of convenience. The way to bring that teeter totter back is maybe with some balance of doing hard things. Steve Magnus, now, is he a like professional endurance coach, runner? I know the name.
I think he's a coach.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. Yeah. I can't remember exactly because it's been a minute, but I'm pretty sure he works with people to perform. And a lot of that is athletes.
Yeah, I gotta check this one out. Sounds great. My last book, I guess I'm a middle-aged dude. I read a Mitch Albom book for the first time.
What was it? The Heaven People?
I read, it's called The Little Liar. It's his new one.
Oh no, I didn't know he had a new one.
It's a story about, it takes place during the Holocaust, about a Jewish family in Greece, and it's historical fiction. So like made up story, but he did tons of interviews. And Mitch actually, after college, flew to Greece, learned to speak Greek, and played at a piano bar for like years. That was his job before he became an author. So he has connections to the area, and therefore, like, could write about it really well. His ability to like tie the story together at the very end is something special, man. It's a really hard material, right? A Jewish family during the Holocaust.
Yeah.
A ton of people die. It's super depressing, but also he manages to put a little light at the end.
I didn't think you were going to go that direction. I didn't think you were going to Mitch.
Me neither, man. Me neither.
All right. So am I closing it out here?
Yeah.
Okay. Disclaimer. This book itself, I kind of walked away from and I was like, I don't know if the book is all that good, but I thought that the points in the book were pretty good. So it got a worth reading from me. But I'm going to talk about it here because I think the concept is a good one, especially, and I can relate this one back to investing too. It's called 10x is easier than 2x.
Oh, this is on my bookshelf. Hold on.
Let's see, 10x easy. Yeah, same book. Have you read it?
No, it's literally in my pile of potential reads.
Yeah. So this one's by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. The premise is that it's using 2x. So doubling sounds like a lot. But what it's saying is in order to double, you can incrementally improve over time and you'll double. Good for you. Nice. In order to 10x something, you need to, there's a series of things in the book it talks about, but you need to like give up some of what you're doing to 2x in order to like leapfrog, as an example. So there's just like set of principles if you want to grow in like a step change way, that there's a series of things you have to do that are different than what you do if you want to grow incrementally. And I think there's some interesting parallels in thinking about investing as well. But what I'd say, you don't need to do 10x in investing. However, I think it's valuable in my own thought process.
I have dumb questions. This is why I haven't read the book yet. As you know, I support small businesses for my day job, and growth cures all evils in a lot of ways. But if you grow too rapidly, that is there are two ways to go out of business. One is running out of cash, and the other is growing too rapidly and having you get out over your skis and like die because of it.
But then you run out of cash. Yeah, it all comes down to running out of cash.
Then you run out of cash, right? So usually we talk about moderate, reasonable, aggressive growth, but how does the book address that? And would it be valuable from that perspective?
Yeah. So the big difference is that this isn't saying, the premise of the book isn't grow as fast as you can at all costs. It's being deliberate. And what it's saying is that oftentimes it's not doing 2x 5 times that get you 10x. It's actually doing less things, but doing them more deeply will help you to grow more. And so what I would say in the getting over your skis, it's usually not deliberate. It's usually just like, let's just take in as much as we possibly can without intentionality. And this brings up more intentionality in that growth.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of like if you think about your customers, right? I mean, you got customers in your day to day. You think about customers, you could say, okay, I just want anyone that comes to me and needs my support, I'm going to take them on. That's different than saying, let me figure out the customer that I can serve best, that I want to work with, et cetera. And your business can be larger by working with 4 customers that
Oh,
are,
absolutely.
deeper with
Yeah.
than 20 customers, right? That is like a death by 1,000 cuts. That's it.
Okay, if I put you on the spot and our listeners have to read one of the books you discussed, what are you saying?
I mean, it's the most playful maybe of them all. I'd go with An Immense World, the one about animal senses.
Okay.
What about you?
I think if you haven't read Poor Charlie's Almanac, you just got to read it.
Okay, that's fair. I
I think it will
haven't.
change your life.
I haven't.
Oh, it will change your life. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna go on the Stripe. Hook it up.
All right.
Get my brittle.
All right, guys. Shoot feedback to skippydoogles@gmail.com. We don't mention it every episode, but we do have premium subscribers that support the show. They get the show at least a day early. They get premium content a couple times a year. If you want to support the show that way, we truly appreciate it. And you can go to skippydoogles.supercast.com to do it. And then also, we ask that you share the show with a friend, especially if you have a friend who's a bookworm. Maybe this is a good episode to share. And hit us with a review on your podcast of choice, because that helps more people find the show. Thanks so much.
Thank you.